Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming in for the third and final session. As I said in my email, it's a bit of a bumper session. We've got quite a lot of varied topics to get through. And yeah, we'll give it a crack. I'd like to get into some detail on the financials and other things if we can, but as always, please ask questions. We'll have the usual 5-minute break at 10 o'clock or so, and finish by 11. So I will start by starting to share the slides. Just a moment. Just give me a second. I can't seem to find. All right, I'm just going to pause the recording. Just hang on a sec. I'm sorry about that. I haven't seen that feature before, but I blame the children. Because when I don't know what it is, I'll blame the children. All right, great. So as I said, session 3, hopefully you can see those slides. And again, want to encourage discussion, and I'll come back to you if I don't know an answer to a question, but please ask questions and raise issues at any time. These are the 5 topics we had left with a possible bonus succession planning if we can get to it. So we've been through, the first session was fundamentals of cooperatives, the principles and values, the law. The second session, we got into justice and good governance principles and conflicts of interest. And now we're into these things. So meetings, strategic planning, financials, and then performance management and culture, which are in some ways come together. And we look at performance management as to do with the board's performance, but also the cooperative's performance, and then also the management's performance. So it's a sort of broad take on all performance. So people happy to proceed? Yep. Great. You've been duly warned what we're going to talk about today. Are there any particular areas, maybe from a previous session or out of this one today, that you'd like to cover, or any concerns or issues that you see for your cooperative that could come up today? Any questions from what I've raised before or what we've discussed?
I think run with it, Sam.
Yeah, come up with them, please. Hopefully we'll trigger some questions and debate. Good. Okay. So strategic planning and risk management. In thinking about this, I was, obviously the way you're structured now with the joint venture, I'm sure there's some detailed strategic plan for the joint venture, or whatever you call it now. But whether you go to that detail in the cooperative anymore would be another question. Is that right, Jim? Would that be a good summary, that the joint venture has some sort of strategic plan, but not the cooperative?
Oh no, the cooperative board has approved the strategic plan developed by the joint venture.
Yeah. Okay. So it's all sort of together in one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm still trying to sort of get a sense of, is that there are, there are some things that some risks, some important issues that really, sits in the co-op, you know, and I guess that's largely about Manildra, but if, you know, yeah, anyway, I just think there are some different things, but let's see how it all goes. I think you have to be careful of that altogether once, because some issues may come up that are really, you know, might be right for the joint venture, but aren't right for the cooperative. But let's see, maybe that's an opening risky statement for me to say with little knowledge. The concept of strategic planning I very much stress to cooperatives whenever I'm talking to them. They're really, you know, as I described last time in that video, you know, the find out what the members want, set out a plan, and make sure it happens. That's the 3 key steps of governance, and strategic planning is that second part. If you can put in writing what you want the cooperative to achieve in the next period, then you know, everybody knows whether, you know, the members know what you're striving for, the management, the staff know what they're expected to achieve, and you know, you can you'll actually get somewhere. And it's you know, it's really it's hard for me. It'd be hard to find an organisation that doesn't need some sort of you know, some sort of planning about what it's doing, a refresher about why it exists, and then putting into place how it's going to get there in the, you know, in the next time period. It can be, you know, a lot of organisations do tend to just to meander along, but I think there's almost nothing more important than what a board does is than in the strategic planning sense. I hope that makes sense, and a bit of an opening opening spray. This is just some quotes around strategic planning. Cooperative directors maintain a long-term perspective of where the cooperative is headed. That's really should, as much as possible, be your focus, to step back and think about where it's going and where it should go. You should lead the process because you are the member's voice, the member's representative. You must consider risk and then decide what should be the focus for the next period. Is that making sense so far?
Yes.
Yep. Of course, the key difference in cooperative strategic planning as distinct from company strategic planning is that role of members, that connection to members. But they're not everything in strategic planning. They're a lot, but they're not everything. You need to take into account, of course, the context, the industry, stakeholders, etc., the broader framework. But really, as I've tried to stress, the board is just there to achieve things for the owners of the cooperative, and in your case, it's, you know, it's the members, it's the cane farmers. Another point to stress, another quote, is that it is a skill. It's to do it well is difficult. Sometimes it can feel like you're just sitting there talking, you know, about your navel, but to actually get good at it, it's actually quite a skill. And to see good strategic planning is can be very impressive. The last point is another sort of quote about what it is. The strategy is a use of assets through long-run planning and development to ensure success. I like having these different sort of ways to sort of define it, but yeah, I think that is what it's about, using your assets to ensure the success. Can you tell me a little about the strategic plan, Jim, or others? Like what are you trying to achieve in the next few years? I mean, you've bedded down the change in structure, I guess, a few years ago. But what's the goal? What's the goal for sugar farming in northern New South Wales? Big question, sorry.
It gets back to what your mission statement is.
Yep.
And your mission statement drives the strategic plan. At the moment, we've got pressure from other land users.
Yep. Is that macadamia farms that I hear about, or others? Yeah.
Horticultural crops, cattle, there's pressures. But we've also putting a lot of the emphasis in our planning into diversification, and the whole strategic plan centres around members' needs and members' requirements, and how we can improve the business to meet the needs of our members. But I think that's putting it simply in my terms.
What's the diversification thing, Jim? Is that meaning members diversifying their own farms, or diversifying the income streams for the business, or what does
diversifying the income stream so that we can get away from a reliance on a single product.
Do you mean members, the farmers, or do you mean the mill itself, or the mills?
Basically, it's the mill business, the New South Wales Sugar Milling Co-operative.
So how are you going to do that? How are you going to diversify your income streams?
There's different products we can make from the sugarcane plant. There's different products we can make during the processing of the product in the factories that take off takes. And we spent an enormous amount of money building cogeneration plants, generating electricity. We've got different products that we're making from the plant: water, cattle feed, cane juice. We're looking at all sorts of things.
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms. All right.
I guess the core business is
projects is looking at putting spores into sugarcane bagasse or trash, and doing it for mushroom farmers.
Yeah, the core business is crushing the members' sugarcane, but if you can do these little projects on the side, it can smooth out peaks and troughs in your, the market you're selling your cane to. So you're trying to survive tougher periods with an extra income stream. That's sort of what it's about.
Yep. And that's what the current strategic plan talks about?
Yeah, it's diversifying, like trying to value add to the products we have as byproducts from crushing cane. Virtually, that's some of them lead up a dead end and some don't, and you just don't bury your head in the sand and go out backwards slowly, sort of thing. So
yeah,
that's sort of what.
And a lot of the strategic plan revolves around culture, safety, things like this in our factories.
It's the whole package.
Yeah. Yes, I mean that's
risk assessment.
Sorry.
Risk assessment.
What I was going to say was, a strategic plan doesn't have to be about growth or, new things or takeovers. It can just be about, focusing on safety or focusing on culture, as well, or it can have both, it doesn't have to, but there's no trouble with having, if everything's going well and where you're sitting in the market or whatever industry you're in, a strategic plan can say, well, right, we really want to get our policies in place, improved, or we really want to improve our workplace health and safety, or etc., or culture. So I think that's an important point. Doesn't just have to be always about growth. It can be about concentrating on yourself as well. All right. Well, that's good. Sometimes I ask people about their strategic plan, and it's sitting on the shelf somewhere. It was done a few years ago, but it has no sort of relevance? Does it get reviewed regularly at the joint board, or does it? When did you last work on it?
It's a living document. It really is a living document.
Yeah.
And I would say the last time it was reviewed and brought to the board for adoption would have been, what do you think, blokes? November, December?
I
It
suppose
was
you're right.
last year.
Yep.
As a staff member in the business, really, certainly I feel like I live and breathe it every day. It's a big part of how we guide the departments across the business.
That's great to hear. Good. All right. Keep going. I've already stressed some of this. Every organisation exists to achieve goals. Strategy is the way to go to get there. It can help you to enhance your understanding of where it's going, how it's going to get there, and how it will be successful. I think those points I've made. It's a detailed plan for implementing the strategy. A set of measures to indicate how well it's going. Generally now they're 3 to 5 year time periods, potentially with an annual review by the board, or quarterly review, or quarterly review by management. Those sort of time frames. So yeah, I think generally you'd have a larger process sort of at the end of each plan, but you'll have, you should stay in touch. And as I mentioned last time, on the board I was on, every agenda item was linked back to the strategic goals in the plan. So when when we were discussing a new product, well, that would be linked out back to the strategic plan to offer new products to members, so the strategic goals. So that really trying to emphasize the strategic role of the board is important, and that can be done through the strategic plan as well. There certainly has been in the past, and I've been involved in organisations where the management, sort of drafts the plan, and the board just sort of signs off on it. But that's really changed in corporate governance over the last couple of decades or longer, and it's really now the board is seen as being responsible for leading on that, or leading on strategic planning, overseeing the implementation, and certainly signing off on boards on the plan. The board should be doing that and being very much part of the process. And as we've talked about before, as sort of the voice of the members into the cooperative. And often there's, often people, you'll bring in an external resource to do strategic planning as well. Yeah. All right. Still making sense?
Yes.
Just
The best line you had was the first one there with the Wizard of Oz. That statement there summed it up.
I'll just
If
take.
you don't have a plan, you're going to get there because you've got no plan, isn't it? That's it. You're just meandering along.
Yeah. No, and as Vivian's expressed, she's, it's very much part of her work, but it's for staff, it's just great to have some clear direction, written down direction as to what you want them to focus on. It really does. It makes clear those roles and responsibilities, makes clear the focus. They know in writing what you want them to do. It's a key document and a key process. So
we actually, Sam, we accompany because the strategic plan itself, it goes into a lot of detail. We produced a plan on a page, so a high-level summary that tries to sort of show how what we're trying to achieve as a business through to some of the programs and action items in a one-page, highly summarised document.
Oh, okay. How long is the strategic plan? Then? It's quite a few pages. Is that?
Yes, the strategic plan. It's in totality because it follows through. It's the strategic plan then leads into actual projects that are designed to support and deliver on the goals and objectives of the strategic plan. So when you look across the entirety of the business, there's a lot of information there. So we have summarised that onto a page, which, as I said, just really highlights those key points in a way that everyone should be able to grasp and understand.
Is that is the strategic plan sort of public, or is it just for members, or how you deal with sort of communicating it?
The plan in totality, no, is not something that we would make public. The plan on a page, however, is a good, I guess, descriptor of the fact that we have a plan guiding our business. But no, the plan itself, because you then go into particular projects, some of that information becomes quite sensitive. We do have a high level version available internally. But as I said, the plan on a page for me just gives you that good high level summary that you can share more broadly. And it's enough information to show that, we actually do have a vision, we do have a plan, and this is the taster or the summary for what sits within that plan.
Yeah, no, I think
It's on our web page, isn't it, Vivian?
The plan on a page is, yeah.
Sorry, what was that, Jim? It's on the website, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's
Plan, not the strategic plan, just the
No.
plan on a page.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that was really what I was trying to get to. I think, something I've stressed through this is, not just having a plan or a vision or activity, but communicating it is really important, communicating it to members. And the number one reason that co-ops get into trouble, is member education. And if members know you've got a plan, or even the broader stakeholders, I think that's important. So yeah, you don't need all the detail, and some of it's not appropriate to be out in the public domain, but certainly, communicating not only what your plan is, but how you're going on your plan, I think is something that's valuable, in keeping everyone understanding the benefit of the cooperative to them. All right, that's great. And then this is just some information about stages of how you would you come up with a new plan, a bit of formulation, review, analysis, looking at the market, reviewing the mission, as Jim's already said, and then the board making approval. And then the last two is really what I'll always stress, is that implementation. Lots of organizations, know they need to do a strategic plan, make a strategic plan, and then have ticked that box, park it on the shelf, and it's not a live document. It's sounding very live for you, and that sounds really good to me. And also this process of reviewing, and it can also come up that you need to do a new one if there's a significant change, like if there's a if there's a pandemic, or if there's some sort of disruption in your industry, you might need to quickly look at, right, well, how are we going to respond? And you might need to do that through strategic planning as well. Okay. Yep. Still nods. That's really all I've got on strategic planning for today. I've put in some resources, a couple from the company directors, as I regularly steal from them as a member. And the top one is very interesting. In the US, there's some really great support for agricultural cooperatives in the US. It comes through a levy, but this strategic planning handbook, it's 20 years old. It looks like it's been done on a typewriter, but it's actually worth having a look at. It's a really good document. They have a number of good resources from the Department of Agriculture in the US, and particularly in supporting cooperatives. So you'll be able to get those when you get the slides. And if you have any trouble getting the company director's documents, just tell me. Now, we have talked a little bit about risk last time, but this is just another way to approach it. I like this definition. The first point, though, culture, processes, and structures about directed towards taking advantage of opportunities while managing effects. So I think risk is often seen as this sort of negative, process, but it's actually about identifying where, your opportunities, knowing how much risk you want to take, and then and taking opportunities. The concept of the risk appetite is here, which we've spoken about before. What sort of how much risk are you wanting to take? I think you're probably not a super risky organisation. I mean, you do need to provide that fundamental service to members of crushing the cane, and I guess that's got to be your number one. But I don't know. What do you think about your risk appetite? Are you up for exotic investments in I don't know, something different, or what? How do you see yourself in this framework?
The risk we take is forward selling sugar. That's a risk. It's a calculated risk that you use to minimise, but there's always a risk in it.
So how does that work? Just, I mean, without going too what? So you're committing to sell the sugar before you've even harvested it. Is that it?
Hedging.
You go, John.
It's all about hedging, Sam. A lot of agricultural products and industries always get into forward selling and hedging. Yeah. But a lot of our diversification interests are always done with the payback schedule and financial analysis. So, I believe the risk taking is totally assessed.
Okay. Have you been burnt in the past? No, I can't think of any. We sometimes the profit and loss has been average out of the hedging, but on average out of the last 10 years, it's been a real lifesaver. Yeah. Is that hedging? You've got a hedging fund as well. Is that something different?
That's something different. We are forward selling to a future market at a set price, and it's that gamble what that set price is going to be, and then you sell prior to that date.
And who's making the decision on those, on agreeing to sell at those prices? Is that done by the board or?
No, it's more or less done by our CEO, and in the past we have had financial officers, or what do you call them? More people that are their sole duty is to kind of look at those forward put sells and hedging funds. Yeah.
Okay. And is it a comfort for members that you've got the price locked in, or is that part of it, or is it securing the markets?
It secures the market, and it's a lot of Queensland and a lot of agricultural products all do future sellings these days, to make that financial gain. It's more or less a part of life with products, and we have got parameters with the hedging. You can only do a percentage per forward crop. So it is, it has got parameters on it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Just everything is called a risk now in this framework, sovereign risk, cyber risk, strategic risk, board risk. There's really every word, every part of your business, you can put risk after it and call it a risk. And that it just to give you that sense of that, of how broad the scope of risk is now. And really, and also I just stress that when something happens, you've really, if you've got some disruption, some incident, some crisis, you really need to learn from a risk perspective afterwards, and that you really need to make sure that you're mitigating as much as possible something like that happening again. Some things you'll never happen again, but that learning of that sort of risk process, I think, is really important.
Those limitations on how much we can forward sell came from an experience in Queensland where they forward sold their whole crop and they couldn't harvest it, and it ended up burning them severely, and so that's why we have safeguards in place on how much we can forward sell.
Yeah, sounds wise. And how long has it been happening, and how long has that forward selling been happening? Like decades, or
probably a decade? Yeah. It wouldn't be decades.
Yeah,
be 10 years or so, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. You've certainly got to look at.
We've always been forward selling product to get our sales budget working properly.
Okay.
We many years ago we played with the dollar. We hedged the dollar, and I'll never forget we lost 250,000, and our old CEO and our old secretary were very embarrassed.
Certainly my experience on the board of a super fund with hedging was, I don't know, currency is just, I don't know. I found it very much a lottery. We'd pat ourselves on the back when we'd make a great hedging decision and make 40 million, and then, for the members, and then 3 months later we'd lose all that in the opposite direction. I mean, it was, as a board, we moved that, we brought in external advice, and, so that the idea of us making those sort of decisions was not wise. It really was a difficult thing to protect. So I'm certainly personally sort of a little bit afraid of that, those sort of decisions, but if that's the way things work. And certainly learning from the Queensland example, Mal, is a really good, and making sure you learn from the experiences of the past and of others. All right, we've got to keep going, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. There's also another company director's resource for you in the slides, but that's pretty light. But that's just a quick go at strategic planning and risk management. Really, you have to be looking at risks when you're looking at strategic planning. How much risk you're willing to take, what risks are out there. Whether you have all your eggs in one basket. You should have that sort of risk lens on when you're thinking of strategic planning, but also it's about taking opportunities, and that's what strategic planning is about. So they're definitely interlinked. Okay. Yep. Still, I think the camera's got a bit better, Vivian, or maybe no, it's still. All right, we've talked a bit about risk. We'll go on to meetings. And as someone who's sat through hundreds and hundreds of meetings, council meetings, super fund board meetings, co-op meetings, I'm quite I'm quite fed up with meetings that aren't well structured and about making decisions. So I get a little bit outspoken in this topic, so excuse me in advance. But first I wanted to just talk, and it's probably puts a bit of focus on Jim, but just some ideas about what you can do as chair to improve meetings, and some of those tips. Some of the things I've already stressed through these sessions about focusing on strategy, but certainly that talking to the CEO before a board meeting, getting, being on the same page as the agenda, what's coming up, what's going to be there. Making sure that we'll talk about agenda setting, but making sure that the focus of the meeting is on the important things and not on the insignificant. Making sure that encouraging participation and engagement by all directors. As I've stressed before, it's a collective responsibility being on a board. You'll fly together and you'll think together. And so that participation of everybody is really important. You'll make better decisions if everybody's contributing. Ensuring that the decisions are good, but also that they're clear so that you're not going back over what did we decide, making sure that that's well run. And then at the end of the meeting, having a think about how it could be done better next time. And even having an agenda item at the end of a meeting that says, well, how did that go? Did we spend too much time on that? Was that how was that meeting for everybody? So I don't know. Do you want to make some initial comments, Jim? How are your meetings? Are they 17 hours long and boring, or are they efficient and fantastic? What would your view be? Obviously, you think they're great.
We certainly don't do some of the things you've talked about. I do meet with the CEO.
Yep.
For meetings. We try and structure our meetings. With the joint venture, it's a little bit difficult because the three directors from Manildra are still developing an understanding of how farmers think and operate. The Manildra people are just straight business people.
Yeah.
We spend a little bit of time not educating, but explaining to them what we expect from the business to come back to our members, and how milling does this and sales people do that and that sort of thing. But no, I think I've always tried to make sure that there's full participation and make sure everybody has their say on contentious issues.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Malcolm and John, but in your time, have we ever had a dissenting vote at a resolution? And the other thing is, another organisation I'm involved in has a separate meeting, a management meeting, to review the previous meeting. We don't do that. And I know we probably should. For individual, we probably review each meeting and think, well, this could have been done or that could have been done, but we don't do it formally.
Sometimes it's easy just to do it at the end of the meeting, like 2 minutes, and just while it's fresh. But yeah.
We don't get off topic very often, that's for sure. I've been involved in other meetings, and it's like getting a history lesson, and we certainly don't have that going on at our meetings.
Yeah. That sounds great to me.
I think the meetings are well structured. We get good board papers beforehand, financial notes, and it is an information feed from the CEO back to the members. Yeah. But I believe it's well structured.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. So agendas are really important, and I really stress having this. Meetings should be about making decisions, and that's really the most important stuff. So when there's a decision, have it up the front of the agenda. I ran this with this session once with the boards of 4 large taxi cooperatives, and one of the chairs said, "Oh well, we start every meeting with my where I give everyone an update for about an hour. And I thought he was joking. And he wasn't, he was serious. And I just, that first hour, that first period of the meeting is the best. Everyone's there, you're switched on, it's the most important time, and you're really there to make decisions. So I really think that, and I hope, Jim, you don't give an hour-long speech at the beginning, because now I'm in trouble. But if, really that decisions first, discussion items second that need to be discussed that may become a decision later or in the next meeting, and then really those things for noting last. Bringing up that, what strategy, what's operational, focus on strategy, having your motions or, recommended motions already drafted in words so that you've got something to play with, and you come out with a resolution that's written. You can have alternative recommendations, but just have things in writing from the start. Sometimes even boards allocate times, to items, and that, sometimes that's hard to work with, I think, but that's certainly an idea I just put out there. And do you get the papers a few days before? Is that right? Do you get some time? Yeah.
Usually on the Friday before is it Wednesday meeting or Thursday meeting? We usually have 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. No, that's pretty good. But yeah, really that putting getting the important things up the top of the agenda and structuring the agenda, I think's really important. Yeah, I mean, I've been in long meetings, and I've got a limit of about 5 hours, and then I just switch off. But there's certainly that if you've got something really important, the big issue, put it up front and have it at the beginning.
Just a matter of interest, our agendas when they come out, they've actually got times.
Right, you do.
Or not times that our secretary or CEO, whoever does them, puts on the agenda. I must be pretty close to the mark.
I think it's a good, a good sort of what's the word, principle, or it's good standard. I mean, you have to be, sometimes you'll need to go over those times, but to actually at the end of that time say, is this worth more, to more time of our meeting? It can be good, and either you can then decide to defer it to another meeting or actually agree to discuss it. You have to make a decision there. You just agree to discuss it and take some more time. But I think that's good. And then that, you're focused on having the, coming to the end of the meeting too, so it doesn't sort of drag on. I mean, the diversity I see in running this session with lots of different co-ops. I mean, some co-ops, the board meetings are a full day, and I'm just, gosh, that's just really not healthy. And you really won't get good new people coming onto a board if they know that, the meetings are really, way too long.
Times are important when you have people coming in to speak. Like they've got to come at a certain time to the meeting and they speak, so you're sort of fitting around their time as well.
Yeah, but it can help your meeting, to keep your meeting on track too, if you've got those times when people coming in. Absolutely. Yeah, if you've got consultants coming in and they're booked for a certain time. Yeah. Good. Just some other sort of suggestions and ideas. The committees, obviously, if there's a particular area or a focus, it can unclutter your board meeting, and the committee can get down into detail. That's certainly a useful and very common, obviously, technique, and standardized in lots of industries. The length of the papers, certainly I felt when I was on the local council that sometimes the papers were just so long, but it was really to try and sort of sneak things through, or, it was almost deliberate, I thought, at some point. But that, you don't need really, really long papers. You need things that are effective, but you need to get enough detail as well. So it's a constant balance. You'll never get it exactly right, but that length of the papers is an issue. in-camera sessions are quite common now. The super board that I sat on, we would, at the beginning of every meeting, the chair would say, well, does anyone have anything that they want to discuss, you know, in camera? So just with the directors, without the staff there. And although it can quite, you know, worry staff, oh, are they talking about us? It doesn't have to be about staff. It could be any issue where, you know, somebody wants to float an idea that they feel might be silly or might be, you know, they're not sure about, or they want to talk about something sensitive. And because you are collectively responsible, I think it's, you know, it's not bad to have that option. We wouldn't have an in-camera session every meeting, but sometimes we would. And it was a useful sort of outlet for that sort of discussion that you need to have. You are, you know, as a group responsible. So some people find that a bit controversial, but I think it's a useful technique. The minutes are very important, obviously. You know, it'll be the minutes that the judge is looking at if you end up in court for some serious matter. So they need to certainly record the resolutions, but they also need to record the areas that were discussed, the issues that were discussed. So, but not sort of he said, she said, you know, John said this, Jane proposed that. It's just, they should cover the topics or the issues, and so that, you know, it can be shown that the board considered these matters in making its decisions. The judges will say, well, how do we know you were thinking about that? It looks to me you were asleep at the wheel. The minutes don't show any record that you were, you know, taking that into account or looking at the issue from the perspective of members, or, you know, considering the financial issues, etc., etc. So you need to think of your minutes as, you know, what you need to show, what you'd need to show a court if it all went pear-shaped. And I've seen cooperatives, I've gone in to help cooperatives who spend an hour and a half approving the minutes of the last meeting at the beginning of the next meeting. And that is just, you know, that's really a terrible situation. So anyway, any thoughts about those first, about minutes or the length of your papers, or you think the minutes are good?
John and Malcolm and Peter afterwards. Sometimes I think our minutes are a little bit brief. Most of the discussion around our minutes, which are very accurate, concerned with typo. But, I will talk about that at a future time. Yeah.
No, just have I think it's, yeah, too detailed is terrible. Certainly, and you rarely want to even say who's saying what, but you want to have that, you know, the board considered this and it thought about this and looked at that and questions were asked about this, and then a decision was made. You want to show that that decision-making sort of process, so that, you know, you can justify that you were, you know, on the ball in your process. And the minutes is, you know, minutes is what they'll look at if that's ever investigated.
As you said in an earlier session, you have to be seen to be asking questions. Absolutely,
that's right. And it doesn't, again, it's group responsibility. It doesn't have to be that Mal asked the question or John asked the question. Just got, you know, a director asked about this and the response was this, you know, just that sort of, yeah, but not down to the level of he said, she said, because you can never write down what people say in a meeting. It'll just, yeah, it can really bog you down. I mean, of course, if you are a dissenting voice and, you know, you should be, and you want to be recorded, that's, you know, that's fine too. That should be possible. You know, if you're unhappy with the decision and you want to, you know, you want to express, you want that to be recorded, that's fine too. But it also doesn't mean again that you'll be perfectly blameless in any sort of investigation. But you know, you should be able to be recorded if you've got a different view. Okay, Knowing your decision-making rules, you know, there's most boards operate, you know, 50% plus one, but I think you were saying that well, you sort of have a effective veto on the joint board, don't you? That's not like both sides have to agree really for something to go forward. That's how it works. Yeah. But for example, the super fund board that I was on had you had to have 6 out of the 8 directors support something for it to pass. So it wasn't 5, it was 6. So that did change the dynamic. And I think it was, in the end, I thought it was quite, you know, quite positive. It meant that things went through when they had a really, you know, quite broad support. And if you were against something, there was only 2 of you who were against it, something that went through. So you, when you were against it, you had strong reasons to reconsider whether you're actually, you know, you had a good, you know, you're on the right track or not. Behavior in the meetings is really important. Code of conduct for directors particularly is sometimes there, if not generally for the members and the organisation. You know, again, you're not going to be able to attract good people if, you know, there's poor behaviour there, and you need safe meeting procedure is a concept talked about now, where, you know, you're playing the ball, not the man. You're playing you know, you're not making personal attacks. You're purely focused on the issues. And the other thing I'd really stress is that concept of fullness and frankness. So you really need to, if you're thinking something in a meeting, you've got to say it, because it's going to be too late if you don't say it there. But if you're thinking it, probably others are thinking of it. And as with that collective responsibility, you really need to get it out and say it. There's no silly questions. There's no, you know, there's nothing you can say that's wrong. But really speaking up, and the chair facilitating that speaking up, I think, is really important to make better decisions and make sure that you cover all the issues. You know, you have power in that being on the board, and you know, you need to you need to make best decisions you can. How do you think you've gone with decision making? Do you think you say, Jim, you said there was you don't think anyone's ever voted against or something. In some ways that's good, but in some ways that worries me, you know, as well. Maybe it's, you know, maybe there's pressure to not be a dissenting voice. It's not bad to have you know, someone against occasionally, I think.
We've had 1 or 2, I can remember, but it's only usually 1 or 2. It's like your 6 out of 8. It's very rare, but occasionally we've had 1 or 2.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that sounds more healthy. You know, if everyone's on.
No, I did once. That's how I know. I know it wasn't a big topic. You know, it wasn't a major issue, but
yeah.
On major issues, like Jim said,
you're on the same. Yeah.
We're pretty all on the same.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
I think one of the things is we've got 9 directors, 3 from each river. And sometimes our directors can tend to be a little bit parochial. They look at what's best for them.
Yeah. That's a balance. I mean, obviously, when you've got to come in with the co-ops hat on, you know, not your district's hat on, but you're also, the reason you've got 3, 3 and 3 is to represent those areas as well. So yeah, it's a real balance, and you know, that's hard. In the end, you've got to be focused on what's best for the co-op, but you've also got to have your region's view expressed in the meeting. So yeah, no, it's that can be a tricky balance, that's for sure.
But some of the concerns each area has, the other directors aren't aware of it either. So it doesn't have to be parochial. It can be a genuine concern that members in that area have that hasn't come to light to other areas. So
yeah.
But once you make your case, then everyone votes on it as it's best for the co-op. So
yeah. it is a lot about airing those issues, making sure it's all on the table. And, you know, sometimes you'll have to take longer for those, you know, for some issues, longer than planned, but that's a good thing. No, there's, I mean, look at local government and wards and stuff. There's lots of reasons to have those, that representation. I mean, otherwise it could all be dominated by one area, and no, it's a healthy thing. But yeah, in the end, legally, you've got to look at what's best for the co-op, and that may mean voting for something that isn't great for your region, but is the right decision to make. Great. All right. I think we've done a little bit of that. I think we're up for our break, so I might just pause us there. And it's 3 past. So if we could come back, I mean, maybe, well, at 10 past, that suit people?
Yep.
All right. Please be back sharp at 10:10. So we've done strategic planning, risk management very quickly in the short time we have. We've talked about the meetings. Hopefully I've given you some ideas and challenges for your meetings, but please don't make them too long or too focused on the nitty gritty. I'm looking at you, Jim, and I'm sure they're good. They sound good. And then we've got the last 3 topics to work through to finish. Get my screen up. Can you see those slides now?
Yes.
Yeah, great. All right. Actually, so we're going into the financials, and I'll make some opening sort of remarks, and then we will actually have a look at your own financials just quickly, just so we can try and make it a bit real. And if you're not already very much aware of them, you can be after that. But first, I have to stress, you know, skills in reading and understanding financial statements is important in any corporate entity. And you're required to sign off that the statements are accurate. And this is a quote from ASIC, not a cooperative regulator, but you know, the federal corporate regulator. You must read, understand, and focus on the contents. You must apply your own mind to, carry out a careful review, determine that it's consistent with your knowledge of the company's financial position, and ensure that nothing's been omitted. And another sort of comment from, well, he was the previous chair. 4 simple principles here. Directors need to be skeptical. They must be able to read a set of financial statements, understand the business, and understand that delegation doesn't remove their accountability. I suspect, I mean, you know, as I said, I run these with all different types of co-ops. So I suspect you guys are, you know, fairly across financials, but I do find, you know, a great diversity. Some people just switch off when, you know, when the financials are talked about, and some of the, you know, the intricacies of them are, you know, can be a challenge. How do you feel about financials? Do you get good support and advice from the staff on the financial stuff? But how do you feel generally about them?
I guess we know enough to understand them without knowing them 100%, if that makes sense. If we don't know anything, we ask the questions that need to be asked. That's sort of. It's
really, really important. You've got well-paid people to help you with this. You've got the, you know, the auditor accounting firm that you use in Lismore. They really do know co-ops, and you know, there's not many firms out there that do, but they certainly do. And you know, it's easy to get poor advice financially for cooperatives, but they're good, so totally recommended by us. So that's a good basis. But yes, and for a board, if you don't have the expertise on the board, you've got to bring it in. You've got to ask those questions. You've got to get that sort of support. But as ASICs will still say, you know, it doesn't. You still are accountable. So you've got to have you know, a solid understanding of where they are. And your financials, when I've looked at them, you know, and I'm not an accountant or a lawyer, but when I've looked at them, you know, there are some complexities with the joint venture and things that you know, that aren't sort of common garden variety financials. So there's certainly some things to some concepts to get across there. All right. Keep going. Just some very basic stuff. The profit and loss is for a period of time, over generally a year. The balance sheet is at a specific point of time. And then the cash flow is the cash going in and out. They're the three key statements, which we'll have a look at in yours in a second. You probably all know that, but just to re-emphasize it. I don't know if you get any sort of dashboard or ratios or anything like that in the information you get, but sometimes they can be quite an easy way to keep track of how the financials are going. The current ratio, obviously, have you got, you know, enough cashable assets to be able to pay the bills that are coming up? Obviously crucial for insolvency. There's dozens of these ratios and percentages. I haven't put them in here, but all sorts of different ones. But you know, there's that. I just want to get, you know, put to you that concept of ratios and, you know, easy ways that to be able to get information out of the financials that can tell you, you know, what you should be worried about, what the trends are, what direction it's going. You have, it's pretty much monthly meetings, isn't it, of the joint venture? Was that right, Jim? Or
Quarterly.
sorry, no, it's quarterly and quarterly. Sorry, my mistake. Okay, so do you get quarterly financial reports? Is that you get the previous quarter or something like that? Or
We get a set of papers monthly,
right?
and the papers contain the financials on a monthly basis.
Okay, but you don't have a meeting every month. You just get those. You get those monthly. That's really good. You've got to keep on. That sounds good to me. You've got to keep on top of them. All right. I'll come out and we'll just have a look at your most recent financials. Sorry. Stop share. Let me just. Okay, can you see those now?
Yep.
See the financials?
Right.
First page.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Obviously, you'd have these memorized, gentlemen. But as I said, yet certainly this firm has a number of cooperatives as its customers, and we've always look. There's John and Jim's signatures. But yeah, someone from the outside, there's a big shift in the profit here I'd be looking at, but the revenue from operations now is for the co-op is really just interest, isn't it? Interest earned, or that's really what, from what I could see from the notes. And because everything's into the joint venture now, is that a fair summary?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I can see what you mean about, fluctuations. When you look at that profit and loss, $600,000 profit, $800,000 loss, from the outside, that I'd be going, right, well, what's that about? So you're always looking at the trends year to year. And then, but what I wanted to focus on was the balance sheet. Looks very much more stable. The concept of current assets over current liabilities, obviously you've got a fantastic situation there. You've got 1.7 million sitting in current assets and only 10,000 in current liabilities. But these financial liabilities, the 9 million, is all your shares. So you have that. Is that clear? Is that right? We've lost Jim as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's right. The liabilities on members have initially put in $130 per hectare.
Yeah, and now there's a whole lot of bonus shares listed in the in finance that have been paid over the years. So yeah, and then I mean, this is the sitting of that shareholding as a liability is well, we see it as a bit of a burden for cooperatives, because we don't see it, it used to be classified as equity. It's not anymore. In theory, if the members left tomorrow, the co-op has to pay them out the share capital. So that's why the accountants see it as a liability, but it's seen as non-current because it's unlikely to happen. That's in a company, you would have that shareholding sitting down as equity down in the bottom here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons we have that amount in assets, so that we can cover members that will have to be paid out.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And the balance sheet looks, you've gone backwards a little, but it looks, it looks nice and stable. There's a lot of similar figures. You've obviously put some cash into a term deposit, I think, is this change up here. But when I'm looking at that, there's some of the details in the notes. And so you see all these notes here on the, if you need more detail, like I wanted to find out where your shares were sitting, because accountants do record them in lots of different ways and lots of different places. So, I had to look into the notes to find those. But yeah, it's the fluctuations are more sitting up here in the P&L, but the balance sheet looks more stable. But that's one of the key differences in cooperative financials, is that the shares are sitting here in the liabilities, and it does make it the way that we're accounted for at the moment is not as is not as flexible as we would like it. And in other countries, it's done in a different way. But that's where we're at the moment.
And did you find TNN's financial notes adequate in some of their explanations?
Look, I've seen their financials before for other co-ops, so it's pretty similar to other things. Look, you can always ask for more explanation, I think, but no, I think they're pretty good. Have you had concerns in the past, John?
No, I think they're good. They actually come in and kind of go through the financials. Yeah. I personally don't think there's enough training in financials with directors on the board, there's no training prior to directorship, or in your early days as directorship. It's just learn as you go. So but anyway, it is what it is. But I find the Thomas and Noble people very good with their explanations, to go through it slowly and kind of explain it a lot better. Yeah,
as I said, like there's literally at the moment I've really only got 2 or 3 firms that I recommend to co-ops, and they're one of them. So absolutely, and they do a lot of co-ops. as I've said before, that really you are supposed in pure sort of governance, and certainly the governance rules you get in large organizations, you're supposed, when you come on the board, you're supposed to have the skills now, like that it used to be the case. People would go on the board and then get the skills, and a lot of larger organizations now have requirements, certain training, etc., done before you can go on the board. I think we won't get really be able to get into the detail today, but you could have a whole session, on financials and the whole training, and there are training programs around for that, and it's worth doing. But I also say to co-ops, use TNR, like you're paying them, like and you've said they're coming in, and that's good. And if you are concerned, get them in and have a session with them. They particularly know your co-op, and make use of them. As I said, bring in the expertise if you're not. I mean, this is what I was looking at to understand, or to try to understand, and some of this is, as a non-accountant, some of this is pretty complicated, but I was looking at this statement to understand what's happened, what you've done in recent times. And then, some of the other notes, I was also, trying to work out where you've got, how it actually works. And it's not simple now, the way it's structured. I mean, it's simple now, you've got it set, but it's not, it does, from someone coming from the outside, it takes a while to sort of understand what you've done. And this is where this is the detail on those bonus shares. I mean, you've got, 4 million in shares, but you've got 5 million that have been issued over time in bonus shares. I don't think you've been issuing bonus shares in recent times. Would that be right?
No, those bonus shares were bought. They were an extra investment by growers. Yeah.
Okay. We've lost Jim, Vivian. I don't know if should we be worried? The internet does seem a little bit less good at his place, but.
I was going to say one thing, Sam. There's been a lot of restructuring right through the sugar industry in Queensland, and there's been a lot of discontent with the outcomes of those restructures. And I don't think we've had the same, I'm pretty sure we haven't had the same sort of grower reaction here to our joint venture with Manildra Group. So I guess that's a plus in one respect.
Is that because you've maintained more control?
And we are partnerships with someone who has a symbiotic relationship with us.
Yeah.
Where up in Queensland, it tends to be more of a takeover, and they've lost their control. Yeah. And I guess they've got a little bit of pot of gold because they've sold their asset, but now they've got to deal with a new owner or whatever.
Gosh, that's a story I've heard, across agriculture in Australia. So in so many different industries. I mean, there's one where they had a cooperative, they didn't run it very well. They eventually sold it, and they sold it to overseas interests. And then the overseas interests squeezed them on selling their product. So now they've set up a new cooperative to compete with the one they sold. The cooperative structure is there for you to be able to keep control and keep benefits down the supply chain. That's sounds like they haven't done as well in Queensland to me. And while you've got it's in a joint venture, you're in with a good partner, and you've got a high level of control still. I mean,
we're not bulletproof either, but we're in it. We've still got to be on our game to stay in business, but it's a better setup than some north of the border.
We're approximately 5% of the sugar industry in Australia, and there's only one other cooperative in Queensland in existence. So basically 80% of the sugar industry is foreign owned.
And that's, for me, that's got to be your part of what you trade on, your brand. That's something you've got to stress at all times, and so hopefully that would resonate with consumers. All right. So yeah, I don't know what else we can pursue in the limited time we've got, but just to give you that fundamentals. But I would certainly, sounds like there may be need to focus on them. Make sure you're tapping into the resources you've got, and make sure you use the TNR and others to give you the advice, and the CEO and staff. I think that's probably, we probably should just continue on to the final two topics. I don't know if there's anything particularly on financials people would like to discuss before we move on. I know we haven't solved the whole, explained the whole issue this morning.
Like you say, Sam, it's a topic on its own. It's probably another whole session you could do analysis on your whole financials. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm not the best person to do that. It would be better to get in. I'd start with TNR, and then if it's not, if you're not happy with what they're saying, then I bring in an independent. But yeah, it's crucial. The point is, it's crucial to your responsibilities, and if you feel unsure that you're across them, well, you need to put up your hand and get some more support. Okay. You can see those slides again now?
Yep.
Yeah. So just a minor point, the records of co-ops have got to keep the records for 7 years. And we've now got the small and large divide, which I think I've mentioned before, where, assets, there's thresholds for whether you're small or large, but I think in your situation, I'd be keeping even if you don't have to, I'd be keeping the audit function. Great. All right, so we've got 2 more topics to quickly run through. We might have to leave succession planning to another time, but hopefully these last 2 will be useful. The first one is performance management, and as I described before, it's about not just your own performance management as directors, but also the co-ops and the management team. And then the last point is about culture, which is and just some ideas on how you can work to improve the culture. Certainly, so looking at your own performance, we did talk last time about assessments and external assessments, etc. And there certainly are, in some industries, there's big requirements from regulators along those lines. But certainly the first thing is to say is have that on. You guys have done, some of you have done these sort of sessions before. Refresher to sort of sit back and say you know it all is not the attitude. Things change, and you forget things, and you need to think of it as an ongoing learning process. It's certainly about the board as a whole, but it's about your own individual learning as well. You'll be strong in some areas, but you won't be as strong in other areas. So that sort of thinking, that sort of approach is important. Certainly in the super fund board I sat on, there was self-assessment and peer assessment regularly in an annual, so we would actually sit down and talk about, talk about each other, and whether we thought the others were contributing, and just that really you're there to add value, that you're there to do something, and that being open and honest about others, but about yourself, and that the contribution you're making is an important framework. We've talked about meetings and productivity of meetings. Meetings need to be, they need to deliver something. They need to be worthwhile, and not just meetings for meeting's sake. some sort of induction process. I don't know how you know, when you come on as new, if there is some sort of induction process. It took 2 days on the super fund board when I started there, and it wasn't great, but it was something. But I sat down with the CEO. They took me through a whole lot of the policies, the industry, etc. I don't know. Have you got any sort of induction process?
Nothing.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a clear answer. We've lost Jim again, or you are there, Jim? No, you're there. Or at least you're hopefully you're listening. So yeah, that might be something to focus on. It certainly will help with succession planning, but giving people a sense of what the role is. A lot of organizations now have a board charter. So it's a document that just sets out what it means to be on the board, what you're signing up for, what the expectations are, what your role is, what you're doing, what you're not supposed to be doing. But these can be quite long documents with links to all the policies, the rules, the constitutions, etc. And they can be a really good sort of reference document for for an incoming director. So potentially that's something to put on your radar, developing an induction some sort of induction process.
The CEO does make himself available to new members if they have any questions and whatever. I'm pretty sure that's in place, but as such as a document that explains the process to go through for induction of a new board director, we haven't got it now.
Yeah. And I mean, the chair too, can play a role in that, into helping a new director come on and bringing them up to speed, of course. But yeah, look, it certainly helps you. Again, it's that concept of you come on the board and then you learn. Well, really, the more up to speed you can be when you come on, the better for the organisation. And if you come on and then something happens, there's a crisis, and you're just not equipped to to contribute to to contribute to how the organisation deals with it. All right. So when I think of performance management, I'm also thinking about the cooperative. So that third part of the what governance is, making sure that the goals and targets are met. That's a key part of your role. So you need that reporting. It's good to hear you're getting the monthly financials. You're looking at and reviewing it at your meetings. But efficiency is a key word. I mean, any business needs to be efficient, and you need to be looking at it through that efficiency lens. But your job is to make to make sure the cooperative is as beneficial to members as it can be, as efficient as it can be, and make sure that it's heading in the right direction. And reviewing those, you've set the strategic goals, strategic plan. You've set out a plan for the next period. Well, you've got to be monitoring, and there's got to be, are the stats on workplace health and safety going in the right direction? Is what's happening with the amount you're paying in wages? What's all those things you need to be on top of and reviewing, and that's what, for me, performance management is from the cooperative perspective.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can I just go back a bit? We have got a board charter.
Right.
It's not a very detailed document. It's 15 pages.
Okay.
And it sets out in there the roles and the responsibilities.
Okay.
But we also, a new director coming on soon, he's already had some sessions with our chief financial officer and our secretary. So, they don't come in cold.
Okay. Sounds like some of the directors who came on earlier felt it was a bit colder, but it sounds like things are improving. If that makes sense? Yeah. No, that's good. So is the board charter easily available?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On our website.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jim. I'm glad we got you back.
technology.
All right. And then the third element to what I'm going to talk about, which is very brief about performance management, is about the staff. So, and we talked a little bit before about, you know, about your relationship with the CEO, but, you know, they've a key role for the board is at least with the CEO's employment situation, remuneration, but potentially with some of his or her reports. Whether, you know, knowing what sort of arrangement is in place, knowing how it's set up. Is it a permanent employment, or is it a employment for a time period? A lot of CEOs in bigger organizations, it's always a time period now. You know, it's not a permanent job, and there might be appointed for 3 or 5 years, but it allows you to maintain some tension in the relationship, and it's a very key relationship for you. KPIs, and you know, I certainly watched on the super fund board a transition from KPIs that the CEO wrote and, you know, put up to us and we sort of ticked off, to where by the end of my time there, we were writing the KPIs and making it very clear what we wanted the CEO to focus on in the short term. And that getting more on the front foot in that sort of situation, the CEO will appreciate it, potentially the senior staff. They know what you want them to focus on, and they know what, if they achieve, they can rewarded and applauded for. So it is a few other just quick comments. I mean, it is a professional relationship, however well you know the CEO, and I'm not, you know, or any of the staff, you know, it is a professional relationship, and you have to have some sort of distance, because you will, in the end, you know, there could in the end be a situation where, you know, a very difficult situation to deal with, and you know, and maintaining some level of tension is, you know, is part of it. There must be very good communication. They must be able to communicate with you, but also they should be, you know, very open. And it sounds like your CEO is very open, and, you know, gives you opportunities to communicate. You also want to, you know, let them go ahead and do things and not micromanage, but let them take ownership of things. And that's important. And then that, culture, which we'll get into in the next thing, is really important. But, you know, organizations with good culture have good long-term performance. That's been very much established. But I wasn't sure if you've got a sort of short-term plan with the CEO, or Jim, whether you do play more of a role as the chair day to day with the CEO, or how does that work? If the CEO wants to go on leave, who does he ask?
I've got what I think is a very good relationship with our CEO. In actual fact, our CEO's just had some fairly major surgery, and he's back at work half the day each day of the week. Right. And he goes home at lunchtime. He still works from home.
Yeah.
But, no, we've talked about some things, and he's coming up to the end of this last one was a 3-year contract.
Right.
And we've got to talk very soon about that and succession planning. It's a fairly difficult point to discuss. But you know, the CEO is the CEO, and he's got to have ownership of the business with responsibility back to the board. And, you know, we can't meddle in his job.
No. That balance can be difficult to find, and it's not all. There's no sort of, you know, there's no black and white way to describe it, but that can sometimes be difficult. And he's been there a long time, hasn't he? He's been involved for a long time in the industry.
Yeah, he's been there, what, 13 years, John?
You're on mute.
Something like that. He was at another mill before he came to our mill too.
Right.
Another organisation in the industry.
Yeah, he's had a lifetime of sugarcane experience, and yeah, he's been with us about a dozen years, I'd say.
Yeah, well, that's got to be valuable, that experience. Absolutely. But yeah, okay. He's coming to the end of his working career, I think Jim was saying. So you've got,
I wouldn't say that. He might hear me.
if he wants to, okay. But no, but that, it's obviously it can be one of the biggest things you're involved with as the board, and yeah, it's very much about personal relationships, and but yeah, it's also a key driver for the performance of the organisation. So does he have performance reviews, Jim, or KPIs or anything like that?
He has performance reviews, and his KPIs are basically measured on the success of the strategic plan. If he can show us 4 things that he's achieved in the strategic plan that have been new in the last 5 years, they all go towards his performance.
Yeah. Okay.
But we haven't got set KPIs. You must get here, here, or you're gone. No, that's not there.
But you'll have, those are all fine. You don't have to have set written ones, but how frequent are those reviews? Is that 6 months or a year? Or
One of the directors from Manildra,
and
myself talk about it at least every 12 months.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts about that from others? Obviously, you need to be very careful, Vivian. Yeah. All right, we'll keep going. We've got to finish. There's some more resources there. Again, one from the US. Again, a sort of a typewriter document, but it's actually, there's a very interesting questions in the back of it, which I encourage you to have a look at. Just questions to directors about what things you should be across. It's an old document, 20 years old, but it's worth having a look at, and particularly relevant for agricultural co-ops. All right, we're getting near the end. Whiz through the last one. Culture, we've talked about it last time as well, and because it was part of the good governance principles, but we've singled it out here as a bit of a focus. Some quotes here. Shared norms in the organisation about consensus about what things mean and how things get done. Culture is to an organisation what water is to a fish. Complex, stable, resistant, and difficult to identify. The board must have a role in informing and monitoring culture. Deathly silence after those. It is a bit of a nebulous concept, but yes, Mel?
Well, when you said before, not to meddle in, I guess the board's role in monitoring culture isn't, I guess, policing it as such, because that's really the CEO's job. Yes.
Policing's definitely not the word to use. I agree. But having some other, it's now very much, I mean, I saw the chair of, I spoke to the chair of Medibank Private a couple of years ago, and she said, she goes down and has a day in a branch, and goes down and do those things because she wants to get sort of on the ground, sort of feedback, and management know about it. And, management, they can't be too threatened by that, but she was adamant that she wants to get, sort of see what it's like at the coalface, and that can put some staff in a difficult position. They're worried they might not want to interact with people at the director level. But it's important. It's very much stressed now in larger corporate governance, that sort of getting information from different channels. And I'm sure you all have other avenues in the industry, and through people in the organisation to get that sort of impact. And obviously you've got to treat that information carefully, and you keep management in the loop. But you shouldn't hear everything just from management. Like what you hear otherwise is important for this. Observing interactions can reveal a lot. Alternative opportunities for dialogues, what I've talked about. When you're involved in recruitment, if you're involved in the CEO recruitment and those sort of things, think about culture. Is that think about culture in that sort of selection process. When you're setting out what the board's priorities are, when in that strategic plan, or in however else you communicate to members, to staff, to stakeholders, setting out that you can set some, you can stress the values of the organisation, you can stress what you think, and that what you do as the board can have an influence on culture. Inclusivity and diversity is important for a strong, efficient organisation. You want people to feel a part of something, and you want to have diverse points of view. So value statements, codes of conduct, how you deal with misconduct, all those things are important for culture. And this concept, from the previous Army chief, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. All those things I think are useful, and ways that the board can have an impact on the culture. And you told me before that it is in the strategic plan. That's already on the agenda that you've put to the CEO and to the organisation, and that's a start. But if you feel like it's not good or it's deteriorating, well, you need to take some steps and talk to the CEO about it as well. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
What did you really mean by that last point?
The one at the bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, it's about, if it's not just the board, it's everybody, but if if you've got an organisation where people are saying, oh, that's just how we do it here, Johnny's skimming a bit off the top, and everyone just turns a blind eye, everybody's going to be thinking that, skimming a bit off the top is fine. It's that you've got to deal with, you've got to set some standards. Often in cooperatives, I say, while it can be very difficult to expel a member, it's afterwards, after it's done, it can be a very good for the culture of a cooperative, because the boundaries are set. People understand that, or members understand that, if you do this, then then there will be consequences. I don't know. Does that help, Jim? But really, that if you let something slide, then you're saying that that's okay. Is the summary of that quote.
It's how I interpreted it, was turning a blind eye. Exactly how you said it.
Yeah. Does that make sense, Jim?
Yep.
Yeah. And just quickly, reinforcing the point, lead by example, understand the culture, and get involved in that process of values. It's, organizations weren't talking about their values 20 years ago, but you've got your values, you've got the 5 values up there, and that's part of this this whole culture debate. And there's one final thing from left field US source again, which is from the grocers there. 7 steps to re-energize your cooperative culture. That'll expand your minds if you have a look at that. And a document from company directors. All right. That's it. We're very close to time.
Sam, so I've just got a question. So when you talk culture, is that the culture of the membership base of the cooperative, or obviously there's, those values are very widely used within, say, the milling side of the business with staff and employees. In fact, we've just kicked off a new group called an engagement team. But again, that seems very focused on the people in the milling side of the business. But I don't really know whether we've done anything in the past or how we kind of manage culture across the broader membership. I don't know whether that's a question for some of the other guys that are currently on the board.
I think it's a great point. I think when in the previous session, when you weren't here, Vivian, we talked a little about culture, and we sort of did focus on the cultures in the mills and that side of things. But absolutely, we have to have a healthy culture in the members as well. If all the members are sitting back and grumbling, or unhappy with things, or that they're all part of the enterprise, and that should, I don't know what the directors think, but how would you describe the culture among the membership?
I think it comes back to communication, doesn't it? If you're informing your members of what the co-op's achieved or what their goals are, and they're informed, and you're communicating with them, you can sort of cut off any unrest that's out there.
Do you get members calling you up, Vivian, unhappy?
Not me personally. But I do get the odd email because I have the communications at Sunshine Sugar. So I guess I do probably see from time to time some of that. It's very rare. I'm sure it's the type of community in which it's more, there's more talk than emails or phone calls, talk within the group. But that's just my assumption based on my experience.
I'm sure the directors hear from members, and you probably get some pretty varied views. But no, I think culture is about them too, absolutely. And yes, I've stressed several times that communication piece, continuing to explain to members what you're offering and what you're delivering for them is really important.
It's not just to our members either, it's to the community. Like, yeah. I know in the Queensland industry, they have Great Barrier Reef issues, and educating the public on, it's easy to point the finger who to blame at sometimes, and we have issues here around cane fires and new residents to the area. If they come during the off season and then they start burning, they're not aware of the activity that the cane industry actually carries out here.
Yeah, we've got a member, Mullumbimby Rural Co-op, and gosh, some of the changes in land and the people coming into the area up there is it's amazing. How things are shifting. Yeah, I understand. All right, I think we'd better finish. Let you get to the rest of your days and off to your harvesting. Thank you very much. It's been great for me, but hopefully it's been useful for you. We like to keep this as you've got my contact details now. No one should ever hesitate to contact me, and let's you won't have become perfect directors in the Can you hear us, Jim? Are you all
I
right?
can hear you, yeah.
Okay. You won't have become perfect directors in these 3 sessions, but it's always about experience and continuous improvement. So hopefully there's been some value for you. But
I'm
Any-
a bit disappointed I missed the session on financial statements. That was one of the reasons I wanted to have the course. You know, so that people could get a better understanding of how to read financials and that sort of thing and use the ratios. But it'll be interesting to see what your printouts are that come through.
And really, look, we only skirted the surface, and as John said, I think you could have a session. You know, you could have a whole program on financials and make use of your auditors, your accountants. Yeah, but we didn't get into lots of detail, but it will be there in the recording, Jim. Yeah.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you. I might just stop the recording. I mean, I will send you. I'll send you up a hard copy of our manual, so everyone will get a copy of that as well as a resource, and some certificates for those who've attended. So look out for that. I'll send those up to you, to Lee and Vivian, and they should be able to get them out here. I'm actually flying up this afternoon to do the Clarence cane growers tomorrow, so I'm doing a session with 15. I'm just talking sugar at the moment.
Yeah.
But, that should be fun. And we do an annual conference as well. So if you, it's on next week in Sydney. So a bit short notice for that. But I'll send you in the last email. I'll send you information about that, so you can just see what we're doing, where we bring all co-ops together from all different industries. So yeah. All right. Thank you. Great.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you for accommodating our doing this online. It's enabled us to actually be able to go forward and do this, and having those resources to then come back to and follow up later. It's a really good asset. Thank you.
Look, I understand much better now the risks that you have with the mill. So yeah, no, that's I fully understand. Okay.
The biggest risk is the climatic risk too. Don't forget that one.
Yeah, that wasn't on my list, was it? Absolutely. It's changing. All right. Good morning.
Righto. Thank you.